I was originally born in Syria, which is in the Middle East. But I didn't really spend much time there. My parents moved to Saudi Arabia when I was like around 2 years old, and that's where I spent the majority of my time, with occasional like summers and vacations back in Syria. So the back and forth and living in Saudi Arabia was how I spent my childhood.
Why did they move from Syria to Saudi Arabia?
It was a better job opportunity for my parents, and it's a better living situation overall. Like, given the situation in Syria, it's difficult to make a living. Even though, like, my dad was an engineer, but he still had to work like 1 or 2 jobs to make things livable. So just a better living situation overall. So we all moved to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, one thing, America, I always tell people we've lived in other countries, you and I both have, and when you've lived in other countries, it gives you perspective on the country you live in today.
That's true.
We both live in America. And so you get a lot of people who live in America who've never experienced another country, another culture, and yet they complain about all the negative things about America.
True, yeah.
And it's like, well, if you only lived in another country,
you would know the blessing.
then you would realize, like, there's a reason why people come to America, right? How many immigrants are fleeing to China? How many immigrants are fleeing to Russia?
True.
How many immigrants are fleeing to North Korea? They're coming to America, and there's a reason for that. And we'll get into why your parents came here, but yeah, it's when you've lived in other countries, it helps you gain perspective on, sure, is America perfect? No.
Yeah.
But does it provide you opportunities that other countries don't?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
So so your parents grew up in Syria.
Yes.
And then they got degrees there. They went to college there.
Yeah, my dad got his engineering degree there. My mom is still working towards her degree. Obviously, with kids and whatnot, she had to put a pause on it at that point. Yeah, but they both grew up there, lived there their whole life, and then moved out after having me, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So Saudi Arabia, what was that like growing up there?
I would say it was still good to live there compared to Syria. At least living situation wise, like for example in Syria, it's common to have the electricity go off almost on a daily basis. Water is the same thing. So stability wise, I would say living situation was a lot better. But as a female or as a little girl, like there wasn't a lot of support for, let's say, physical activity or even schooling. Like, yes, I am from Syria. I still speak Arabic, which is what the language spoken in Saudi Arabia, but you are still seen as an international or a foreigner. So that didn't work out very well, and I started to see that as I started to grow up.
Yeah.
Like, for example, at one point, we were trying to get into their public school system. And they were like, well, we can't really get you to the school that you want because you don't really have the right for it.
Wow.
So we tried, like, we saw the differences as in how they treat us versus how they treat the people that are just like them.
And you look pretty similar too, right? So it's not obvious.
Yeah, no, we look similar. We speak.
And with all the clothes
language
that you wear, it's even harder to tell.
You can't really tell, but there's still, like, you could tell the differences. They could tell the differences. Yeah.
So what did you end up doing for schooling growing up?
For schooling, so when I was around like 4th grade, my parents applied to immigrate to the US. That was back in 2003, 2004. So I was in a public school at the beginning, and then they switched me to international school with my brother so that we get the language. We knew this process would take a while, so they were like, let's get the process started. So we moved to international schools, which was a blessing because we saw like the people from different nationalities, people from different backgrounds, and even like opportunity-wise, we were still engaged more with physical activity compared to like what public schools would have offered. So that was a blessing. it definitely shaped me. It exposed me to different backgrounds early on.
Mm.
But at the same time, like the school that we were in had a British curriculum, while we were aiming to go to the US, which is a different curriculum.
Yeah. So I really want to delve into even what those elementary years were like. 'Cause
Yeah.
just for like a girl that's lived in America, that's
Hmm.
now that you've been in America, you probably are somewhat aware what their life is like. So picture for us what a normal day like for you would have been, or is it not that much different no matter what country you're in? You still have the same desires, wants.
I would say it was a lot of staying at home. One, the weather is super hot, so that's part of it.
Yeah.
But
How
two,
hot?
oh, too hot, like around 120.
And that's all year long? Or is there
The majority of
is
the
there a
year.
period of time where here we have our seasons?
Yeah,
Where
over there it's majorly hot.
it's either really, really hot or hot.
Yeah, yeah. The only season change is like in spring or fall, you would know it's a season change because there would be a lot of sandstorms. So the air quality would get terrible. That's how you know it's a season change.
Wow.
So the outdoors weren't great for you to explore to begin with, let alone the fact that it's a desert. So it's not like compared to here in Washington where you got like parks and whatnot. Over there you don't really have much. Plus, like my dad worked the majority of the day, and my mom, like women couldn't drive there, so we were bound home basically. So that's how like the majority of the childhood went, unless we were visiting Syria, which that's a different climate. We visited relatives. We went to like the parks and whatnot that were there. So like we always looked forward to that part of the year. But as in living in Saudi Arabia, it wasn't, I would say it wasn't the fun part of childhood.
Yeah. But do you know, so like my daughter, a typical day for her, she's 8 years old. She wakes up, she gets to, like when I left the house, they're outside,
Yeah.
they're playing. She gets to ride her bike. She gets to, we go to the park. We get to go to there's a lot of things she gets to do.
Yeah.
But I don't think you really got that.
No,
It's just,
we didn't
you're
get
just,
that.
do you know you're missing out because you're watching TV shows that you get to see the American lifestyle, or are you just kind of like, this is the life I live and you don't know any different?
Both a yes and no. Like, yes, sometimes I would feel that, like, why aren't we doing what those people in the TV show are doing? But at the same time, as I said, like going back to Syria during those vacations helped balance things out. Because it's a different environment, and together with the social gatherings and whatnot, that helped balance things out. Like, yes, we could push through the majority of the year being like just school, staying at home, like taking care of studies and whatnot, but we definitely looked forward, at least as kids, to going back to Syria and just having fun outside and with the relatives.
So then you switch over to the international school.
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was quite interesting because I was a fourth grader, so I knew how to write Arabic, which starts from right to left, versus trying to learn English, which starts the opposite direction.
Was that your first exposure to really learning English?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the language learning was definitely huge because, like, my brain already started learning Arabic, but then you had to switch it up and like start from
it's like
scratch.
if I was trying to learn Arabic now, it'd be so difficult.
Yeah, and it's different letters, different
And
thing.
the left to right thing too.
Yeah,
where
yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, so it was quite challenging, but my mom worked really hard with the school to get me up to pace with my peers. She spoke with the teachers, and the school was really cooperative with that because, like, I was a fourth grader, but I was technically getting like the first grade curriculum in a sense. So they ramped things up for me accordingly, and towards the second semester of the year, I was like almost up to level with my peers.
Wow. Really quick then.
Yeah, but my mom did a lot of the hard work. She was learning the language as she was teaching us. Like, I literally remember her like writing all the word definitions on top of the words on our books.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to know like how to teach us that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool that your mom took, she was heavily involved with that process.
Yeah.
So what was it like when you started interacting with people from other cultures?
It was also interesting, like with especially people in the Middle East, we all speak Arabic, but it was different dialects. Even like cultures were slightly different. But I would say like being in a school setting, that helped me interact with them with an open-minded uh, approach.
And does a little girl still have to wear everything that you're wearing now, or are they able to have their head exposed?
In international schools, you didn't have to, but if I were still in public schools in Saudi Arabia, you would have to.
Mm-hmm.
But as a little girl, I already started wearing it like around second grade or something, mainly because I liked how my mom and aunts like wore it and like looked in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what got me into wearing it, like just seeing all the people around me wearing it, and I saw it as the norm, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I continued wearing it since then.
Mm.
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine having that.
It was
I don't really
difficult.
like wearing a
Yeah.
hat. I want it to be as free as exposed
Yeah.
as possible, but
No, it was certainly
get used
difficult
to it.
with the hot weather. Yeah,
Oh.
certainly difficult.
So then how long were you in Saudi Arabia before you came to America?
Um,
So you made the
So-
switch in fourth grade, and then how much longer were you in that?
we stayed there until 2016. That's
You-
when we moved here.
Okay, so you were there a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into, is it middle school or high school? Or what do they call it over there?
Uh,
Did you have middle school years?
yeah, yeah.
So same thing, just focused on
Same
studies?
thing. Yeah.
Are you exposed to movies, TV shows, stuff
Oh
like
yeah, movies and TV shows. Like I would say that's what the majority of the people do there. Like as I said, because of the weather and the lack of activities arranged for people over there, especially for females. Like for boys, you could find something, but once again, like if the father is at work the whole day and the mom can't drive, you can't really do much, even for the boys.
Can the women drive there now? Didn't they change that
I
recently?
heard that they can,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not 100% sure.
If you were wealthy enough, would you have a driver that could drive the
Oh
family
yeah,
around?
oh yeah. The wealthy people had drivers that could take them anywhere. So
And what
Yeah.
city were you in?
uh, originally when we moved there, we were in Jeddah,
Mm-hmm.
and then we.
How big of a population is that? Do you know?
I'm honestly not sure, but it's very close to Mecca and Medina, so the places where people go there for
Yeah, isn't Mecca like a pretty touristy as well, or more pilgrimage?
more pilgrimage,
Mhm.
not.
Because you're getting a lot of visitors. Is there a certain time of year that they're visiting there, or is it all the time you get people visiting Mecca?
It depends. Certain time of the year, like we got the month of the pilgrimage, there's people from all across the world basically trying to get there.
Mm-hmm.
During the year, it's less crowded, but there's still a lot of people like trying to get there.
So I'm assuming you've been there.
Yes, yeah,
How was that experience for you?
it was amazing.
Mm.
Yeah, it was amazing. Definitely different than just reading about it or
Mhm.
watching it on TV. So it was very spiritual and calming, I'd say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, so for a young girl that's listening that maybe
Mhm.
is in high school, paint that picture what that was like to be a high school girl in a country that's not America.
Yeah. So given that we were in international schools, in a British curriculum school specifically, you had to choose like where you were planning to go for university so that you know what classes to choose and what's like they got their by 8th or 9th grade, if I remember correctly, you have to choose like whether you're going to be a science major basically or a business major, and based off that you would choose your classes.
You can't choose female gender studies.
They don't have that.
That's not an option.
No. So, with that being said, the conflict in Syria started around 2010, which is around the time that I was, like, I believe, 9th grade.
And what is this conflict?
The Arab Spring and whatnot started around that time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, what that meant is that, well, I'm not planning to attend college in Syria because of what's going on there. Um, so it was a confusing time because school-wise, you had to choose, but at the same time, I don't know what to choose because my home country is a place I can't really seek after graduating high school, nor we knew like anything about the timeline regarding the U.S. immigration.
Mm.
So, what I did, I was the only student doing that. I took both the science and the business side of things,
Nice.
both classes. It was a crazy schedule, but I'm like, I want my options to be open.
Mm-hmm.
While at the same time knowing that the U.S. immigration is like we knew it was coming up because the usual timelines is around like an average of 10 is what we heard at that point, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we were approaching that timeline. So I had to look into what the U.S. wanted as well, which it didn't want the British curriculum per se. So I had to study the SAT on my own.
Mm.
And that was interesting because like the IGCSE which is the British exam, it's a lot different. Like there are, at least for science classes, there are 3 different tests. The first one is a multiple choice. The second one, short answers. The last one is sometimes like longer or practical stuff. Versus the SAT was just multiple choice and it focused on English and math, at least the SAT one. So it's a whole different system that I had to learn on my own with all of this uncertainty. I'm like, I don't know where would I end up. So
Did you feel stressed? Did you feel, because I look at young people today and they talk about how hard their life is and how they're stressed and all the boyfriend girlfriend drama, and it's like, did you experience all that, or because that was just the world that you lived in, you didn't know else? Like, did you ever feel like, oh, poor me, or just like, hey, this is my lot in life and I'm gonna figure it out?
I always saw obstacles as something to be solved. Like everything has a solution if you think of it or if you approach it from a different angle. So I was like always looking for the solution. That's why I came up with the solution of taking both science and business classes. So keeping the door open to different possibilities is the mindset I tried to have. That's why I worked both on the IGCSE and the SAT at the same time. Like try to navigate several things at once so that whichever works, like let it be, I don't know, going to the US or going elsewhere, whichever works, I got the stuff that would help push me forward, depending on which one works.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. I mean, we talk about America being the greatest nation in the world, but then when you rank it on a lot of the things, we're not that smart anymore. Our kids aren't that intelligent. Our kids, maybe they are intelligent, but they're not putting that much effort in. Compared to these other countries who have way less resources, but their young people are ranking higher on their scores just because they're a lot more serious about it than we are. Here we have all the opportunity, all the resources, and yet kids are graduating high school barely knowing how to read and write. They don't understand math, and you're just like, I mean, somewhere along the lines we got away from education. It's just obviously there's kids that still excel, but
I'd say education is like a major thing that I grew up with. Because like I told you, my dad was an engineer, so he already got his education figured out. But growing up, I saw how my mom struggled with getting her education because she got married young and
was that an arranged marriage?
Yeah. She got married around like 16 years old.
And that's common back then. Is that still as common today?
It depends on where you're looking. Some places yes, some places no. So she struggled trying to get her education figured out. That's why she was learning English as she was teaching it to us. Even though like at that point, she also got into an English major in college because of that. So, but she was still, like, given that we lived in Saudi Arabia and her college was in Syria, she couldn't really like attend everything or attend all the exams that she needs to attend. So to this day, that degree is not finished for her. And that's something I saw like early on. I'm like, I don't want to be in her shoes at one point. That's why I prioritized education for myself. And that's what she pushed me towards as well. She's like, look at how my situation is. I don't want you to be that person. So she was a great influence in that aspect. Like she saw how much she struggled, even like socially, like especially back in Syria, if you're like, oh, this person went to college versus this person did not, people would look at you differently.
Yeah, but it's not even on her when you get married off at 16. It's like,
that's true.
I didn't have a part to play in that. So when you were 16, were your parents looking to do that for you? Or would you have been able to say, no, I'm not doing that?
I've been able to say no.
Is that something that your dad was thinking about, though, when you were a teenager?
They didn't, like, people approached us regarding this topic, but I wasn't really open to it because of what I just told you.
So you did have a part to play. If you would have been open to it, then they would have.
Maybe. Like my mom was listening to me, so she was a good support in that aspect. That she's like, okay, the girl doesn't want this, so let's.
But did your mom, like when your mom was a young girl, if she would have said no, would her parents have cared about her opinion?
They would have listened to her. Her parents are like open-minded. All her sisters and brothers have like went to college, so it was just like a unique situation for her.
Oh, okay.
So they would have listened to her, but yeah, it happened that way.
Okay, so let's. Usually in America, a pivotal moment is their junior, senior, especially their senior, as they're thinking about the next path.
Yeah.
Was there a pivotal moment in your life when in your late teens, or is it that moment when you came to America that changed that? Oh, was that a pivotal moment?
Pivotal moment,
as in like, so in America at 18, you are leaving high school to go to college, leaving the household. Did you have such a moment like that?
It was more of like.
I guess how old were you when you came to America?
I was like, I just started 18. Like.
Okay, so did you have to do high school here at all?
No, I finished high school back there.
Okay, so you finished high school in Saudi Arabia, and then you knew you got accepted. From when you got accepted to when you came, how long was that process?
So there are some things in between.
Okay.
It's not as smooth as that. So I finished high school 2014.
And how old were you at that point?
I was like the end of 16, beginning 17.
Okay.
I was always the youngest in my class, just given where my birth date is. So I finished high school 2014 with a 3.79 GPA, having done the SAT, having graduated from British curriculum schools. But over there, I couldn't get into any of the Saudi Arabia colleges. Like, obviously, I can't get back to Syria, but...
So foreigners just couldn't get into those colleges?
We tried. My mom and I went to one of their local universities. They're like, well, you can't really get there because neither of your parents are Saudis.
Yeah, and
so,
it's interesting in America we talk about discrimination, and it's like, in America, if you want to go do something, you can.
Yeah.
Right? That's what happened to you in Saudi Arabia. That is discrimination.
That is discrimination.
Like,
obviously,
and
yes.
so it's like, where could you go in America where you're like,
Yeah, I even did like their version, the Arabic version of the SAT, which is a test that they have only for Saudi Arabia colleges. So I did that in addition to all the other stuff I did.
And how high did you rank on that?
I ranked in the 90%.
You did really well.
So I did really well.
So simply because it's not even the color of your skin, it's your nationality.
The nationality plays
simply because of your nationality, they're like, we're not accepting you.
I was aiming for like at least a science major. Like
If you were a man, do you think they would like? Did they treat your brother different? Is your brother younger or older?
He's younger.
Okay. So
he wasn't.
He never had to face that.
No. So yes. So that's another layer to it. Females, there are very limited fields of study to begin with, and if you're a foreigner, that limits things even further.
Okay, let's get real fun into this.
Yeah.
Are male and female seen different over there?
Yes.
And define that for us. For the girl in America that thinks they're oppressed, please define what that looks like in Saudi Arabia.
Obviously, driving is a big part. When it comes to education, even getting into medical school was limited. Like even if I was of a Saudi or nationality, there are very limited seats for females. And if, let's say, you wanted to open up a bank account or something, you can't really do that unless either your employer like is involved with that bank account, or if you have like your father or your guardian be with you. So it's very limiting in that aspect. Versus if you're a man, you don't have to.
Yeah, and again, it's so frustrating in America because these people complain about the patriarchy and how you can't do all these things, and it's like in America we actually have more females going to college than males. You know, they complain about all this stuff here, and it's like, let's compare it to other countries, and then you let me know which country you want to live in.
Yeah.
You know, because they just don't understand. Like, there's all these other countries that all the things that we complain about in America, they're way worse in other countries. Go find me another country that has the freedom that you have here. Go find that country.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
That's true. That's true.
So you were seeing, did that make you feel like, oh, poor me, I'm seen less than, or you just accepted that's just how life was?
I was at that point, yes, I still felt like, why is this the case? Or I felt sad for myself because it's like, well, I did the hard work. Like, why am I not getting anywhere? But at the same time, I knew that what's coming in the future, like, we had high hopes for coming to the US, and that was around the 10-year mark for us.
Did you have other female friends that were foreigners that were in the same position that you were in?
Yes, but at the same time, the people that I knew at least were from other countries in the Middle East. So for them, they just went back to their home country.
So for you, the difficulty was there's nothing to go back to in Syria.
Yeah, I can't really get back to my home country. So that was like a huge obstacle. I guess if my home country didn't have any conflict, I may have like started the first few college years there. And then like whenever the US immigration got figured out, I would have moved here. But that wasn't an option. So I basically lost a year after graduating high school just because I couldn't get into any of the local Saudi Arabian
You took
colleges.
a gap year at 17.
Gap year. Yeah.
Where nowadays kids in America are graduating at 18 or 19.
Yeah.
So what did you do in that gap year?
So in that gap year, my mom was working in one of the also British schools teaching Arabic. So she helped me get like an assistant position to one of the supervisors there. So I started working there in the same school that she was in. And even with that, like speaking of discrimination, I was hired at the same time as another Saudi girl who's about my same age, supposed to be like the same position relatively. I ended up doing like 2 or 3 times the work that she was doing, and yet getting about like a third of her pay.
Yeah, again, that is discrimination.
Yeah, that is discrimination.
When you can't get into college because you're of a different nationality, you are getting paid significantly less simply because of nationality.
Yeah.
And you both were girls, and it's just
that's true.
Like we say there's all these problems here in America, and it's like it's not that bad.
Yeah.
If my wife wants to go get a job, my daughter wants to go get a job. Well, my daughter's too young now.
Yeah.
But she has the opportunity to go do that.
That's very true.
Where you just don't get that in other countries, especially in Middle East.
Yeah.
So how much of your religion play a part in, you know how like with Christians, there's some people that identify as Christian but aren't practicing. Do you get that in Islam as well, where, hey, because my parents are, I identify as that, but I don't really practice it? Or have you heard of the term nominal Christian?
No.
nominal Christian are the people that aren't practicing,
Yeah.
or like because my parents were, I am. I'm curious if you get that in Islam, or it's like, no, if you're in Islam, you're all pretty like hardcore about it.
You're in Islam, you must be practicing in order for you to identify as that. But at the same time, I've seen a form of the nominal things, but majorly here in the US.
Yeah.
If you're in an Arab country, like everything around you is
It is a
regarding
huge,
religion.
America, we have separation of church and state. We're over there. That is not a thing. They are
No.
very much the same. Your
Very
religion
intertwined,
controls the government, controls everything.
Basically, depending on which country you're talking about,
Yeah.
but basically that's the case, yeah. So, I forgot what your question was.
No, we were just talking about, there was no real question in that regards, but just how much of an impact your religion affected you. But it's very pervasive.
Wouldn't say it affected me, at least when I was living in the Middle East. That was the norm. So I was just in a norm
Yeah.
that. So I wouldn't say it affected me there. If anything, I would say, like, being in Saudi Arabia, they are a huge Islam country, but like given the discrimination and whatnot, that doesn't follow the Islam rules. But at the same time, that's how they are.
Yeah. And isn't alcohol legal? But
It's not legal.
it's not legal, but people still drink it. Or is it more underground?
More underground.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely not legal. Like you won't see it in the store or anything. Yeah.
But people still find a way to consume it, possibly. All right. So you did your gap year. You got paid. So per perspective, what do you think that was in hourly dollar range? So people can really grasp. Like my first job in America when I was right before I turned 19, I think I was getting paid like, this is a 2006. I was getting paid like $8 an hour, maybe $7.
Yeah.
What were you getting paid, do you think?
I would have to convert the currency.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
But not a lot, I'm assuming.
Not a lot, no. Not a lot. Even for being in Saudi Arabia with the same currency, it wasn't a lot. Like it was something, but not a lot.
But you at least had hopes that you were going to go to America. Did that give you hope?
Yes, that pushed me forward. So in that gap year, I worked on getting the TOEFL test taken care of. I did the SAT subject test. So not just the SAT reasoning, which is like the English and math. I also did the subject test just to help me once I reach the US to be in a better college. So yeah, I still had my hand in studying in that gap year, while at the same time I was applying to international schools just because like of uncertainty, because we still don't know when would the US one work. So I applied to international universities. I got into a few, and then, like as I was trying to decide where to go, our immigration paperwork.
Where did you apply to?
Majorly Turkey.
Turkey.
Yeah. Majorly Turkey, and that's where I got accepted. One of them was a medical school acceptance. The other one, I forgot. But that's where I got accepted. And before like deciding what to do with the offers, our immigration paperwork got processed and we got notified that.
Nice.
Yes.
So was that a big moment?
That was certainly a big moment. But as a repercussion of that, I lost like one more year after that gap year.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't go like to where I got accepted and had to wait until like we were finally here.
Yeah, it's interesting. You think about, America is an open country. We have a lot of immigrants. I'm technically an immigrant. I was adopted. And, your process, my process of getting adopted took years. Yours took 10 years.
13.
Mine took 13. Yeah, yours took 13 years. Mine took several years, lawyers, money, fees.
Yeah.
And today you have people just walking over the border.
Yes.
Not 10 years. They're just coming over the border. Come on in.
But at the same time, like, especially given the what's going on in Syria, we have had, like, I've heard stories of people like seeking asylum here and whatnot, but that process also takes a long time. Like, yes, they might be living here, but in order to get the right paperwork, that takes a ton of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, yes, you may walk over across the border, but it's still not an ideal situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I
You
guess,
want to do it through proper channels so,
yeah,
so you
yeah.
can.
But at the same time, the proper channels are not very accessible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of Indian clients, and I ask them how they come, and it's like, well, it's a lottery system.
yeah,
America chooses about 85,000 people a year. I don't know if that's just Indians or just 85,000 people are fighting to come to America through legal channels. And, you know, you have over 1 billion Indians. Not that they all want to come here, but a lot of
yeah,
them want to come to America, and it's
Sure.
very difficult for them to do so.
yeah,
But if they come over in legal channels, then they're able to work right away, make good money. You know, they're usually pretty set.
yeah.
So talk about what was it like when you came to America, what that experience was initially coming over. I'm assuming you flew over.
Yeah, we flew over. Um,
Was it like a big culture shock when you saw the freedom that people had and the
Not necessarily, because like seeing how life was in Syria, it was like relatively, like being in Syria is relatively more open than being in Saudi Arabia.
and they're both Islamic countries, right?
Both Islamic countries, yeah. But
Do they just interpret the book differently?
I wouldn't, yes, partially, but at the same time, in Saudi Arabia, the culture part of it influences a lot of what they do. So more so than the religion. So culture versus religion, that's where the difference is between like Syria versus Saudi Arabia. Syria also has like different religions. We got a fair amount of Christians there. So it's like you would be exposed to different cultures and habits in Syria than in Saudi Arabia. Like in Syria, a woman could drive versus Saudi Arabia, they can't. So things like that. Like Syria was more open in that regard. You could do anything there, basically.
This is a little side note. How's Syria now? Is that a country that you could go live in and have a good life in now, or is it still?
It depends on who you ask. If you got the money, then yeah, you could purchase the life there, basically. But if you are like one of the people who have to still work in order to make a living, then it's not the happiest life.
How did the wealthy people in Syria get their money in the first place?
That's a good
Or is it
question.
a small percentage of them, or is it government? Usually government people.
Usually people of power, I would say. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
All right. So you come to America. What was that like?
It was, when we were first in the airport, it was nerve-wracking because we literally left everything, and like we obviously sold our furniture and whatnot, and we literally ended everything in Saudi Arabia. So it was like we're in the airport without anything left behind us.
You risked it all. Burn the bridges.
Yeah, you burnt the bridges. So if things didn't work out, let it be like a single paper that was missing or anything, we would be like, where are we going now?
Yeah.
So it was nerve-wracking, just
And your dad probably didn't have a job lined up, or he did?
not yet, not yet.
So you literally come to America on the hopes of what?
On the hopes of,
Opportunity?
yes, working towards education, obviously, because I was like in college age and my brother was following me behind. And work, better life. Those were the three main things. Yeah.
So what was the first few months like?
The first few months were, we
Now
were
you're
sort of,
now you're almost 18, or you are 18?
yeah, yeah. It was a lot of waiting because we had to wait until we got our social securities, green cards, and whatnot.
Where were you living?
We lived in Indiana for the first part of it.
How did they select that?
Hmm?
Did your parents select that, or the government, the U.S. government selected that?
So our immigration paperwork got processed because my uncle from my dad's side got his citizenship and then applied for my dad for us to come.
And he was in Indiana.
And he was in Indiana, so that was our, like, that's the only place that we knew of, sort of.
Yeah.
So that's why we landed there first, because at least we know someone in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where we started. It was like a period of, you know how after a burnout you just want calmness. That's the period that came afterwards. Like when we first came to the US. So it was like waiting for paperwork, but at the same time also stressful because no one's working and we're just spending from whatever we got saved when we first moved.
Mm-hmm.
So it was still stressful, but as I said, we had the hopes. At least for me, I obviously worked towards getting started in a school there as soon as I can. And that's what happened. We moved there June of 2016. I started college August of 2016. Literally right away,
Yeah.
right after getting the paperwork.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting because like it's still a new environment. At least the weather was different.
Were people friendly, hostile, didn't know what to do with you, or what was that like?
I would say for the major piece, they were friendly. At least the people that we engaged with, and like let's say the Islamic Center, that's where, because we came in, it was around the time of Ramadan, so our fasting month.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time around the Islamic Center around that time.
Yeah, and people who are part of some kind of religious group, no
Yeah.
matter where you are, you can always find that kind of affinity towards.
Mm-hmm.
You have something in common, no matter what your skin color is.
Yeah, so that helped ease things a little bit, but at the same time, like you won't click with everyone. So there were still like some good parts to it and bad parts to it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was lucky that I got into college because the type of people that I met as a new immigrant were a lot more open-minded than if, let's say, you were to go to the grocery store,
Yeah.
where people are like, especially in Indiana, there weren't many people who wore the headscarf there.
Yeah.
So like almost every time we went to the grocery store, people would ask us, so what's this you're wearing?
Like, I just black out the sun.
Yeah. So yeah, that was interesting. It was also around the election time in 2016. So
yeah.
it's like outside of a college scenario or outside of the Islamic Center, it didn't feel like as welcoming.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like having those communities in place, let it be college or the Islamic community, helped ease
So you
things
started
up.
as a freshman in college.
Yeah.
And you're almost 19 at this point?
18 still.
18? I mean,
Yeah.
that's when generally people
Yeah.
are still in high school at that point.
Yeah, that's true.
How was that workload? You just didn't find it easy based off of how, because it seemed like you're a pretty serious student growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like first year of college was probably pretty easy for you.
I would say it was easy. It was easier than I thought.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I would give credit to being in a British curriculum school. Their curriculum is, I would say, a lot more rigorous than the US
That's a
one.
nice way to put it.
Yeah. So
I went to college, and I have a bachelor's and I have 2 masters.
yeah,
After completing all that, I look back on it and I'm like, that was a joke.
yeah. I agree.
It's unfortunate. I have an MBA, I have a master's in human resources. And
Nice.
it's like, what are we teaching these people?
Yeah.
What did I actually learn?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I remember some of the courses I took. I took this one. You just take the silliest classes
Mhm.
just so you can get the credit, just so you can get the.
I
like,
hated the general education stuff.
And
I'm like,
it's like-
there's no point.
I had to take I took this one class, world music,
Yeah.
and we had to. The first time I went, the teacher was super boring.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about it was just terrible, and I was like, I'm not going back to this class.
Mhm.
And what he would do in the test was he would play a random sound.
Yeah.
He would play a song, and you'd have to remember what instruments were played in the song, what country.
Mhm.
It's just all this silly stuff.
Yeah.
It's pointless.
Yeah. Yeah. Class-wise, I found it a breeze. Like it wasn't difficult at all. I did the placement tests and I placed well into like English 101 and math. Like even when I did the placement test in Indiana, I placed into calculus right away.
Nice.
So I would say like yes, I was a strong student in that side of things. So I got started right away with all the sciences. Those were the first three classes I started. I started not intro. I forgot what it was, but basically biology, chemistry.
And at that point, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do as a
Oh yeah,
job?
oh yeah. I knew right from the beginning I wanted to be a doctor.
Was that something from a young age you always wanted to
Yeah,
do? Okay, so
yeah,
the desire was to always become a doctor.
sure. That's
Okay.
why I leaned more towards the sciences overall.
Was it
Um,
because of money or because you wanted to help people? Or-
because I wanted to help people. Like at least looking back at the Syria situation, my grandfather was like had a lot of complications medically. So I wanted to understand like why did he have such complications and how could I have helped him. Um, so at least that was the personal side of things where I wanted to know more. Plus at the same time it was an interest of mine. Like I always want to learn more, know the reason behind things. And yeah, that was my interest.
Mm. So you got through freshman, sophomore. Did you end up making any friends? What was the
Yeah,
social life
certainly.
like?
Um, certainly, especially that first semester in Indiana. Um, I made some good friends that I still remember to this current day.
Mm.
I remember one of them. Uh, I asked him like, okay, what advice would you give me like as a person just starting? And he's like, prioritize. And that advice has stuck with me to this current day. It's like prioritize things. Let it be in your daily schedule. Let it be in your life. Prioritize like your mental health, your well-being. Prioritize. Work on what are your priorities. So yeah, I would say that impacted me quite a bit. But I didn't really spend much time with them after that. Like we moved after 6 months to Seattle.
So what caused that here?
My dad found a job here, so we all moved together.
And when did your dad learn English?
Um,
Did he learn when you had learned initially, or he had to learn later?
I would say I don't really know. Like he obviously went to college, so he
So
learned
he knew
it at
English
some point.
before you knew it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He didn't have to learn it at the same time your mom
No.
did? Okay.
Yeah.
So you got a job out in Seattle and then moved you out to the Pacific
Mhm.
Northwest.
Yeah.
How was that?
Um, it wasn't. I would say it wasn't that different in as in lifestyle for us, but it was more different as in climate.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's more green here. It's not as hot or humid or as much thunderstorms
Yeah.
as Indiana used to have. So the climate was the major difference. But other than that, well, Seattle also is uh, like has a lot of population in it. We were in the suburbs in Indiana, so it wasn't as busy.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, lifestyle-wise, it didn't really affect us as much.
Mm-hmm. And then where'd you go for your, what school did you go to?
For my associate degree, I went to North Seattle College. I got my Associates of Science, and then I transferred to the University of Washington to get my bachelor's in science.
How are you paying for all this?
Well, since I was a good student, I got the right grade, so I was covered by scholarships.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I didn't really have to pay much.
Nice. Pays to be smart.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It definitely pays off. So I was covered, at least tuition-wise. I still had to work because I had to cover like my other life expenses, like not just the tuition.
Yeah, you got a party.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I wasn't a party person. I was always focused on this is my goal. That's what I'm working towards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. People who have a big enough why,
hmm
that can keep them motivated for a long time.
Yeah.
And it helps them get through times that maybe aren't as fun
hmm
because they have that big goal.
Yeah.
And the people that don't have a big why, can get distracted by life, can
Sure.
end up just kind of going without just having no purpose.
Yeah.
And because you've always had that drive, I
Mm-hmm.
want to do this, I want to do this, it's just helped you belong to the next step. What will be interesting is once you get that thing that's you've been driving so hard for,
Mm-hmm.
what will be the next thing to keep you going? Because there's this thing where like the guy wants to become a millionaire,
Mm-hmm.
then he becomes a millionaire, and then he's not satisfied.
Mm.
Or the guy wants the hot girl,
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
the hot girl, and then it's like, oh,
That's it.
that's it. She was supposed to be everything, and then
Yeah.
I realized she wasn't, you know?
Yeah.
So you finish at UW, then what?
Well, um, before finishing at UW, it's so I graduated from UW June of 2020,
Yeah, that was
right in the pandemic.
yeah.
So, but before that,
Did they even have a graduation?
no,
Yeah.
no,
The past few years has been weird for people in school.
yeah,
A lot of things didn't go as
yeah. I mean, they had a graduation 2 years after that, but it's like, well, at least they had something.
yeah.
But prior to that, like at least in my junior year of college, I was basically working around 2 jobs, so more than full-time hours together with full-time studying.
What were those jobs?
Nothing much, majorly retail, and I also taught at one of the Islamic centers here as well.
Mhm.
So my schedule was pretty busy, like super busy, in addition to volunteering in hospitals, trying to get the shadowing hours, volunteer hours, while preparing for the MCAT as well, because I was preparing for medical school at that point, together with the family business that my mom and I had. So it was like a full
What's that
schedule.
business?
We had a home daycare.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I just moved a tenant into a home,
Oh, nice.
and she like emails me the next week. She's like, "You forgot to mention that there is an in-home daycare next to me,
Oh,
and there's kids screaming all the time."
oh boy.
I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry."
Yeah,
They don't like advertise that on the house,
yeah, yeah.
so I feel bad for her because it's like, it's one thing to hear the neighbors' kids, but now you have kids that are there all day,
All the time. Yeah,
and she works from home.
yeah.
And so if she had known that, I don't know if she would have moved in.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel bad for her, but
Yeah,
in the winter though, those kids won't be outside. They'll be inside the house, banging on all the doors and windows.
that's true.
So your mom probably did most. You just helped your mom out with the business. Does she still have that business?
We don't, unfortunately. Yeah. But at that point, the point I was trying to get to is that my schedule was super busy that I barely got enough sleep. And like one time I calculated how much sleep I got during the full week, and that was 8 hours for the full week.
That's not good.
That's not good. So,
You should have learned that in one of your courses. You need to get sleep.
yeah, well, you certainly learn it, but it's about applying it.
Yeah.
So my turning point regarding that, especially back to prioritizing and the well-being part, I rear-ended someone because I slept behind the wheel.
Mm.
So that was like a slap in the face, as in prioritize the right things. So from that point, I'm like, okay, well, I need to cut back on my schedule. So I decided to take a gap year after graduating and at least push the volunteering part to that, push the MCAT part to that, so that I free up some of my schedule and actually be better.
Yeah.
Because like obviously with no sleep, you even academically you can't really function well.
Yeah.
It impacts everything.
Right.
So that was my turning point regarding like life balance.
Yeah, I mean, you're the epitome of hustle grind
Basically, yeah.
for those few years.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you had something to prove, or is it more for yourself, just to see if you could?
Not necessarily something to prove, but our family situation wasn't the most stable at that point. So I had to prioritize work as much as I prioritized school, because like I didn't really know how would my family situation turn out to be. So I had to make sure I got at least some amount of cash saved on the side, so that in the case of emergencies, I could tap into that. So that's why I had to have like as many work hours in addition to as many school
So you're
stuff.
working 80 hours?
At one point, I made it to 70.
70 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so funny when people try to give the excuse that I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that, and it's
Mhm.
like you always find time to do the things you want to do.
that's true.
There was
That's
a
true.
season of my life where I was a full-time college student,
Mhm.
full-time job,
Yeah.
full-time parent,
hmm
and I still somehow trained for a marathon.
There you
So
go.
it's like, don't sit there and tell me you don't have time to do something
Yeah.
when it's like, did I go run at 11 p.m. because I need to get my miles in?
Mhm.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
I was like, I'm training for this marathon.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, probably shouldn't have trained for this marathon,
hmm
not getting much sleep. But when someone tells me, when someone tells me, oh, all they have is one job, it's like, dude, you got plenty of time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a fact of laziness.
Yeah.
Or if they're a full-time student,
hmm
dude, you got plenty of time.
True.
Whenever someone says they don't have time for fitness, it's like, no, you have time.
You do.
You're just choosing not to
That's
put
true.
any effort into it.
Yeah.
Because if you're just doing one of those things, you should have time.
hmm
But I was doing all those things,
Yeah.
right? Parent, job,
Yeah.
school,
hmm
and still find time to go work out.
There you go. There you go. I still worked out at that point. So, like, obviously, as you said, if you want to, you could make the time for it. So yeah, it was a crazy schedule. Like, the thing I liked about working retail is that I was able to have some shifts where I start at 5 a.m. with my work and at 10 and then drive to school and then like so on with the
Yeah.
rest of the day. So I tried to maximize as much time that I have when it comes to like scheduling, like have work early in the morning because no class starts at 5 a.m., right? So I try to maximize my time as much as I can. I would say it was a good time period, as in I got a lot of things accomplished in that, but at the same time, I took the hit personally, like with the lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no free lunch. There's always a cost to everything.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to then switch into the field you're in now? And what was that thought process like? And was that a difficult decision?
So after doing some volunteering before the pandemic in hospitals, I didn't really like the hospital environment. I mean, I used to work as an EMT in those undergrad years. So I have been exposed to the blood and all the gory things, but it's like it was the work environment in the hospital that was draining, just emotionally draining is what I found it to be. So I couldn't really imagine myself like being done in a hospital shift and then going back home to my family and trying to be as engaged with them. So I didn't like that part, but at the same time, I didn't really know that chiropractic was a thing. So in that gap year that I was supposed to take the MCAT and do more volunteering with the pandemic, I couldn't do the volunteering.
Yeah.
But we were in a vacation house and I happened to come across their library room. The vacation house was like a super awesome vacation house, like one of the dream houses, I would say, with
Yeah.
its own pool, jacuzzi, and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I noticed one of the books had the same picture as the guy whose picture is in the hallway. So obviously the owner of the house, like, that's his book.
Yeah.
I started reading into it because it was like about like healthy people and whatnot, something about that in the title. I started reading into it, and he also described how he was like a pre-med student and then switched to the field I'm currently in. And what I liked is the work-life balance that he mentioned. I liked how you could treat people without necessarily the involvement of medicine, like as in opioids or
Yeah, that was your first exposure to like functional fitness or just lifestyle or naturopathic or just
basically, yeah.
health outside of the normal.
Yeah, because originally I was like just focused, or at least I only knew of the medical field, like as in being an MD.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about other fields
Mhm.
because that has been my exposure so far. And even back in Syria, we don't really have chiropractors.
Yeah.
So it's like a totally new field that I don't even know of.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like that you would be working in an office or a clinic versus a hospital, which was a huge point for me. Another thing that I liked about it after like researching it a bit more is that you could also work with athletes. And as part of being an EMT, I volunteered at the Special Olympics that took place in 2018 in Seattle. And
I didn't even know they had one.
yeah, so I liked the work environment there, like working with athletes, working in a high energy environment. That sparked my interest in the sports field. And I liked that you could be a chiropractor and work with athletes. And as a result, I started to look into colleges, like chiropractic colleges. And the thing that I liked about the school I went to is that you could dual enroll in a doctor of chiropractic and a master in sports medicine. So that's one of the main reasons I chose that college, in addition to proximity, of course. So
And you've always just been a good student, so for you that workload for the average person probably been pretty difficult, but for you it was just another day.
it was still challenging, I would say, because it's like obviously a graduate school level, not an undergrad. Undergrad, I didn't really have much issues. Like I easily took 18 credits on several quarters, and that went just fine. But with graduate school, it was a lot more intense. And yeah, it was intense, but it was doable, I would say. Yeah.
What's your pro tip on memorization or retaining knowledge? Being someone that is a good student yourself.
Try to teach it to someone else. That makes your brain work in a different way. And once you say the information out loud, it's more difficult to forget it. And that's one of the things my mom used to tell us when we were little kids. She's like, make sure to write things down and make sure to say it out loud when you memorize things, so that your brain works in two different ways. Like the writing down helps your brain look at the words, your hand like memorize how things are written, and if you say it out loud, your brain would also hear it. So that's another form of learning.
What's interesting for me, I haven't had to be in a classroom setting in a long time now, but because I listen to so much audio now, I prefer learning that way now. So the book I'm listening to now, I got the digital book so I could read it, and I couldn't read it.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, I don't know if I was bored, if I just didn't want to put the effort into it. But now that I'm listening to it, I'm almost halfway through the book.
Yeah.
It's also helpful because I'm able to do it while I'm doing other stuff. So when I lift weights, I'm listening. I'm always listening to something,
There you go.
whether it's an audiobook, podcast, whatever. And I'm also be able to listen to it. Like the book, I'm listening at 2.25 speed.
Yeah.
So you're able to get through it just
Faster.
so much faster versus if you're just sitting there, it's the only thing you're able to do at that time.
Yeah. I started getting more into that, especially that being in the chiropractic school, which was in Portland, but my family still lived around the Seattle area. I had to drive back and forth almost every single weekend.
Why?
Mainly because, so my parents got divorced like right in between that gap here and the beginning
How long
of
were they
my
married for?
chiropractic. 26 years.
You don't have to, it may be their story, but I'm just curious, like from other cultures, were they ever in love in the first place? Or did they fall out of love? Or again, however much you want to share, I'm just curious.
It wasn't necessarily about love or not. It was more about like managing life in general. Like when you got one person trying to build for a better life while the other person's not seeing the value in that, or even worse, like trying to basically break what you just built. That's not an ideal situation. And obviously at some point one of the person trying to build will be like, why are you...
Were you trying to act as a peacemaker during that conflict? Or were you like, nah, I'm doing my own thing?
Not necessarily a peacemaker, but I was I was primarily supporting my mom doing that because she was in that scenario, she was the one building, and my dad was the one doing the opposite of that.
Interesting.
So
Do you
I
think
was,
part of that was because coming to America was maybe harder than he thought, and he didn't get the social life that he wanted, or
not really.
because I've heard of other immigrants that come over, and so I'm married to my wife's Russian. She's never lived in Russia,
Yeah.
and so I have a lot of just Slavic
Mm-hmm,
friends,
mm-hmm,
and so I've seen families that come over where the wife excels in America,
mm-hmm.
and then the husband doesn't, and he ends up just being a bum.
It
For whatever
wasn't
reason.
quite the case, at least in their relationship. My dad was able to find a job without having to go through the accreditation of his degree or anything, literally 6 months after
Yeah, that's quick.
coming to the US. So life-wise, things were right on track for him.
Mm-hmm.
And after coming to Seattle specifically, my mom worked towards getting a down payment for the house that we were in, which is the one that we had the home daycare in. So she worked towards getting us a house because that's also one of our goals overall, is just stability, because we don't have that in Syria, nor we had that in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So owning a house was one of our main goals. And when I say our, I'm like, me and my mom are like the two people we're talking about. So owning a house was one of our goals in order to provide the life security that we all have been looking for. My dad didn't see it that way. He saw it as more like this house being a curse on us, and it's not. He didn't see the blessing in it, I would say.
Did you guys ever end up buying a house?
One more time.
Did you end up buying that house then?
We ended up buying the house. Yes, my mom put in a lot of the effort. I would say 90% of the effort. It was just my dad, since he had the higher paying job at that point. Like, he was the one like to sign off on the loan and whatnot. But he didn't put in any effort or financially. Like, he covered the mortgage later on, but it's like,
how's their relationship now? Strained? Do they get along? Is there communication, or is it just more he's living his life, she's living hers?
everyone's living their own life at this point. The only communication is about my little brother, who's just turning 8.
Oh, okay, so he's...
Yeah. I got 3 brothers.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
like, there's one that's slightly younger.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have an 8-year-old brother.
Yeah.
So he's had a very different life than, because he wasn't born here.
He was born here.
Okay, so all he knows is America.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably pretty Americanized.
Basically, yeah. Yeah.
Acting like all the other little runts out there in America.
Yeah, well, I would say he will have a more privileged life than what I've experienced, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long was the graduate classes that you went through? Was it a 2-year program?
It was a 3-year program.
3-year program, and you're finished with that now? Or you're still...
I got the last 2 weeks of the program here.
Okay, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And then so you're going to go back and graduate?
We already had the graduation ceremony back in June.
Okay.
So right now I'm just finishing up the clinical hours in order to get my diploma and then my Washington license.
Nice. And then what's the next step for that?
The next step is I'm planning to work in a clinic at least for like the next 3 to 5 years until I get on the right foot financially.
Same one you're at now or somewhere else?
Not the same one I'm at right now, just because they're fully staffed. So I'm still looking for places that practice in a similar way.
It's probably hard.
It is difficult, I would say, but there are many places around here, and we'll see where I end up. But the plan is to work in a clinic for the next few years until I get on the right foot financially, and then I'm planning to open up my practice later on.
Nice.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
Did we cover everything in the notes that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, these are just some things for me to remember. I guess one of the things that's helped me keep pushing forward is something that a friend of mine said, as in, be the best version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the the thing that kept me moving forward. Because like you could compare yourself to different people, like especially growing up. You could compare yourself to all those different people, but by the end of the day, you must be comparing yourself to yourself only, because you're the one making progress. Like comparing yourself to other people will always be unfair because everyone's situation is different, whether you know it or not. So that's one of the key takeaways I would give. I would also say make sure you surround yourself with the right set of people, because especially like as my parents were going through the divorce, I leaned a lot on my friends who provided me a lot of support during that. I had to put the strong face on, especially for my brothers, for my mom, and like just given the situation we were in. But at the same time, like from the inside, I like who should I talk to if I need to be strong in front of my family? Like, who do you have outside of that? So definitely surround yourself with some good friends who would help you focus on where you're headed in life and give you a broader picture of what's going on around you. One of the things that my friend told me at that point is that, well, is there anything you could do in this current moment that would change things around you? Like anything at all that you can do? I'm like, no, I did the best I can. He's like, that's your answer. Like, you could control how you react to the situation, and that could change your outcome. But if you start to look for, okay, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Like, you might get an answer, but at the same time, are you headed towards your goal or where you're supposed to be headed to? No, you just got an answer. Yeah, so the way you react to situations will definitely shape how things turn out for you.
Yeah, you know, as I think about your life, some people would look at it and be like, oh man, that's for you, or I can't believe you had that life. But I look at it and it's like, you know, the people that have gone through hardship, they generally end up having the motivation to work their way out of that.
That's true. Yeah.
And what's interesting about immigrants is they come to America and they take advantage of opportunities that are provided, and like owning a home or working. Like sometimes you just have to work.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
may not always be the funnest job, but you guys, whether it's Africans or whoever, Slavic people come here and they usually get into construction. And so at the end of the day, you guys come to America and you go to work.
True.
And right now, you have a lot of people who have always been in America that are not finding joy, passion. They have all these mental illnesses. They've got all these physical ailments. And it's just like, at the end of the day, you just got to start working. And then
that's true.
Things kind of work themselves out. What's interesting about how, you know, you went on, sometimes in the living of life, the next step reveals itself. So you did that vacation.
Yeah.
You opened up a book, and that book literally changed the trajectory of your life.
Basically, yeah.
Because sometimes with younger people, we're afraid of the future, and so we don't take the next step because we don't know what step 10 was going to look like.
That's true.
And I look at your life, and you didn't quite always know what the future was going to be, but you did do what you had control of.
That's true.
You did keep your mind sharp. You did keep learning. You did do what you could do in your limited resources with a very unknown future.
Yeah.
And you made something of yourself, and that's really cool.
That's true.
And maybe I sit down with you in the future, 10 years or whatever, and kind of see where your life is at 10 years later.
Yeah.
Because you're almost at the point where you are at that point. I mean, you went to graduation where you worked so hard to get to this point where you now have a skill that will then pay for you for the rest of your life.
True.
And it'll be exciting to see where that takes you.
Yeah.
But you know, thanks for sharing your story, because it's when people see people that they may not know how to associate or understand about them, we just see a girl with a headdress and that's it. And it's like, well, there's a lot more to her story.
Yeah.
And if we kind of get to know people, we can see like we all have similar desires, interests, goals,
and we all want some financial stability.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to be loved. We all have these basic needs, and if we can get past a lot of the division and divisiveness, it's like we actually have a lot more in common with people that more than we think we do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have more in common than we don't have.
Yeah.
So a desire for you is, do you want to have a family someday?
Mm-hmm.
Are you taking the time to add that hopefully back into your life?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I didn't start a family of my own until I didn't really start any family yet, but the reason for that is that I wanted to be a strong person myself,
Mm-hmm.
so that I see relationships as in you have to be compatible. Like if there's a difference in the power dynamic, then one person would be like it's not a healthy relationship is how I see it. So compatibility is huge, and in order for me to find the right person, I have to be strong myself. Like I have to have something built up of myself, so that when I meet the right person, then yes, we could build a better life together. But if I started like having a family like before this point, I would be like, I don't know where life's taking me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who I am just yet. So I didn't really see it as the right timing any time before this,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't ready myself. I don't know where am I headed in life, nor where would I end up.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I got a clear path in front of me, and if one day I decided to have some kids, I would be a good example for them as a person who worked hard for what they have, and was able to get somewhere in life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a person who's like didn't get much accomplished in life and then expect so much from their kids, as in, oh, you should be this, this, and that. I'm like, no, I need to set the example first
Mm-hmm.
in order for me to influence the people around me.
Mm. So let's just do a couple fun questions. I'm big into fitness.
Mhm.
So, and we talked, what does your fitness regimen look like for yourself?
Yeah, so overall, I try to work out with weight lifts 3 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
just to keep myself in shape, keep staying strong in order to be also a good example for my patients. Like when, especially working with athletes, you can't really be on the same wavelength if you are not doing the work yourself. So I do work out 3 times a week. I do go out for walks with my mom around 2 times a week.
So you have still a strong relationship with your mom. How's your relationship with your dad?
Not good. Yeah. As I said, it has been toxic for the major piece, and when it comes to toxic people, after giving a lot of chances, you can't really. It would be stupid to give another chance when you know the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a father, I want to have a strong relationship with my daughter.
Yeah.
And so I hope to continue that as she gets older.
Yeah. I mean, forgiveness is one thing. Like, I do forgive him. I got nothing in my heart against him, but giving second chances as in our relationship, I don't see that.
Yeah, and maybe hopefully he comes around. Who knows?
Who knows?
So this podcast, it's called The Game of Life.
Mhm.
And to you, life is ...
Life is a puzzle. You either work towards a solution, towards finding how to manage around things. Like there's always, it's similar to those cubes that you work. Like you could turn this way, then if the solution was good, then you're good. Then if not, you could always turn the other way. I guess my point is that have a plan A, plan B, and in case things don't work out for any reason. So have an open mindset as in regarding flexibility. Like as I told you, even since high school age, I'm like, I know I'm in this country at the moment, but I'm working towards that in case that works. Yet I was still applying to international universities in case that didn't work. So I would say be flexible and always be open to different opportunities. Like you don't know which one would work and which one would be best for you, but at the same time, if you didn't try, you won't know the answer.
Mm.
Like even during the pandemic, when I took that gap year, it wasn't necessarily a gap year because I got myself enrolled into an international business degree
Mm.
because that was my second interest. Like my major was biology in undergrad, but my second interest that I'm like, maybe that would work was business. So I enrolled in that, but I didn't end up finishing it, mainly because I got into my current school, my graduate chiropractic school. But another reason that I didn't continue with it is that I discovered that I didn't really like that. But it was my plan B.
Well, I think a lot of people sometimes are paralyzed by that. With it's okay to try something, and if it doesn't work, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, especially when you're younger or even older, you want to make sure every decision is the right decision,
Yeah.
and it's like that's not how life works. Just like you try out different flavors
Sure.
of whatever ice cream, or
Yeah.
in life you try different things. You don't have to fully commit to that one thing until you know, oh, this is what I want to do. But again, I think too sometimes people are too paralyzed by what is the right decision. It's like the right decision is to take another way I heard it said is directionally in the right direction.
Yeah.
So it may not be the best direction or the right way or the only way, but you're directionally going towards a route,
Yeah.
and then you pivot as
Yeah.
needed, and you've just done that throughout your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you just had to, as I listen to you talk, you're very very clear and articulate in what you're trying to say, and your wisdom is beyond your years in regards to how you view life. You not an old soul necessarily, but I would just say you have a maturity that the typical person your age does not have.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, and I'm curious if you got that from life or from books or a little bit of life experience.
I'd say
or just how you see
majorly
the life.
life experiences. Obviously, the immigration process wasn't an easy one, nor was like deciding regarding schools early on, nor about like my parents' divorce either. That definitely shaped me as in wanting to be more strong, wanting to take advantage of the time that I have, because time is valuable. Like, if you were to tell me what's the most valuable thing, it's definitely time. Some people are like, especially when I got into, like when I tell people, oh, I want to be a doctor, they're like, oh, well, you're going to be 28 or 30 years old when you graduate. I'm like, well, I'll be that age either way. I would rather be something
Have a skill.
that I want to be. I heard a quote saying that time flies, but the good news is that you are the pilot. So it's like you got control over it, as in how things shape out to be. That's another reason I got into the master's and the doctorate at the same time, because I'm like, I want to utilize my time the best that I can, because I don't think I'll be back to school after finishing my doctorate. But at the same time, I do want to get that master in sports medicine. So that's why I enrolled in both of them at the same time. So take advantage of the time is a huge part that I would say helped shape me. Yeah.
Any last thoughts? Is there a question I didn't ask that I should have asked? Oh, I do actually have a question.
Sure.
This is for the female listener. Do girls have it as hard as they think they do in America?
I would say not as hard as they think. Like, obviously, depending on the industry and whatnot, like there will be some difficulties. But at the same time, if you kept that mindset in your mind, as in, oh, well, I'm a girl, I'm not gonna get that, let's say, job. You won't get that because you think you can't. And that reflects on your self-confidence and like even how you approach things. Like if I said, well, I would never be on a podcast with someone, I would have never accepted your invitation for that. So it's like how you think will shape the opportunities that show themselves to you. If you put yourself out as, oh, I'm open to this, and I could get there if I wanted to.
Did you read that in a book?
Well, maybe, I don't know. It's just the mindset that I try to think with.
Yeah. And that's a powerful mindset. There's a book called Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, nice.
And,
I didn't read that one yet. No.
And it's an old book. It's
Yeah.
like 100 plus years old.
Uh-huh.
And the guy basically, in the beginning of the book, he's like, I'm not going to tell you the secret of the book,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to have to read it and hopefully you find a secret.
Yeah.
And the secret is the title, which is Think.
I like that. Yeah.
And because he's like, mindset is a big part. It's mindset plus action,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you have people with poor mindset and action, and that will take you somewhere.
Yeah.
And you have people with, I'm going to manifest, I'm going to have all mindset, and with no action.
With
and
no
it's
action,
like-
you won't get anywhere.
And so it's a healthy, sometimes one will carry one over the other,
Mm-hmm.
but it's both.
It
right?
is both.
I
Yeah.
can watch videos of people running all day,
Mhm.
working out. But
If you don't run, you
until I
won't.
go do
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Or I can go work out, but if I want to learn how to do it maybe more effectively,
Mm-hmm.
then I should maybe go learn about
True.
it, right? So I can have a
That's
better
true.
mindset around it.
Mhm.
And then you can use that in philosophy in anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you're going to tackle.
Yeah. Well, I'm obviously religious, but a mindset or a code that I have in mind is do your best and God will do the rest. So it's like it has two parts to it. You have to do your best in order for God to do the rest for you. So yes, you could manifest, but you have to do your part first. So that's what I try to do. That's why I've been like doing my best as in try this approach, try this track, try doing this, utilize my time better. And then when things come up, when opportunities come up, then you are prepared for it.
Mhm.
You worked for it in order to actually go through it and do well in it.
What do you hope to see in your 8-year-old brother who didn't have the life that you had growing up?
Mm-hmm.
What do you hope that he learns? Because you went through some things that he never will have to.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? There's a thing that comes up sometimes with guests of trauma, big
Yeah.
T, little T, and some could say the the first 18 years of your life, or even after that, you've experienced some trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Not that all trauma is bad. Like literally, when you're lifting weights, you're causing trauma to your
Trauma to the
muscle
muscle in order for it to
get
grow.
the stimulation. So,
Yeah.
but so that's strengthened you. It's
Sure.
made you who you are because of the life that you had. But now your little brother doesn't have any of that. He
Yeah.
doesn't understand that same difficulty of the unknown of the future, or just the lack of resources.
Mhm, mhm.
So when you think about your little brother, what do you hope or are you just going to say, hey, you know what, this is the life that you have, and I hope you figure it out? Or I guess what do you hope for him, or what advice do you have for him living in America without having those
Yeah.
life experiences of being in other countries?
I would say a big one is to have a goal and a reason for why you have that goal,
Mhm.
because that's what pushed me forward all those years in order to get to where I am at today. So if you have a why, you will work towards achieving what you need to achieve. So having a reason for why you are doing what you're doing is a key point. Another one is take advantage of time, because that's the only thing that's not going to come back. Don't waste it.
Yeah.
That's huge. And you won't know the answer to, like, you won't know if an opportunity will come up to you unless you seek it. So similar to how you won't know the answer if you could walk into that room unless you knock on the door.
Right.
So always be open to try new things. Engage with people more, because like some of my best friends are people, one of them is someone that I worked with in retail. So that's like a place that I don't expect to make like the best friend of. Another of my best friends was my roommate. So be open and treat people the way you would like to be treated. That's also huge in order to make relationships work. Like if you don't want anyone to treat you that way, don't do it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope you do find the right guy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes guys, I haven't been in the dating game in a while, but sometimes guys can be intimidated by a woman that is strong,
Yeah.
and because they want sometimes they want girls that aren't as confident, so they can be the man
Yeah.
per se. But I would keep your standards high, and I'm sure you'll find that because there's a lot of single people out there, a ton,
Yeah.
and they're finding it a hard time to meet each other. I mean, Lee, right?
Yeah.
There's all
That's
these
true.
people that are just like, we have a lot of unhappy single women. I'm not saying you're unhappy, and we have a lot of single men. For whatever reason, they're not able to find each other. But I'm sure you'll find a way. Because if you're just sitting at home doing nothing, you're never interacting in the social circle.
That person's not gonna knock on your door.
Yeah, and you're just swiping all day in an app.
True.
It's going to be hard to find that person.
Yeah.
Someone like you, the same tenacity you put towards school, towards work, I'm sure you'll put that same drive towards
That's true. Yeah.
whatever. But here's advice I'd give to you when you're looking for a man, is now that you're older, like you're not the advice is a little different when you're younger because you're probably dating guys at that age. But now that you're going to be looking at older guys, they have some history you can look at to see.
True.
Like, if that guy's 18, then it's like, okay, you're kind of betting on the horse.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hoping this guy
turns out well.
But if you're looking at the older guys, then you
Yeah.
can see what did you do in those adult years that you were responsible for.
Yeah.
And the one thing I look at is that guy, and this is one thing I would encourage for my daughter or my boys, is whatever that partner is that person showing the ability to always be learning and always be evolving and always be just putting themselves out there, because we are always constantly changing. So here's a really good quote that I heard. Change is going to happen. It can happen in 3 ways. 1, it is forced upon you.
Yeah.
You show up to work and they fire you.
Yeah.
Right? That was forced upon you. Again, there was maybe your behavior caused that, but something that you weren't planning at all and it was forced upon you. 2, it accidentally happens. We meet and I'm like, hey, I like that restaurant over there. You go try that restaurant. So it's more just, it can be good or bad, but it's just more accidental. Or 3, it's deliberate.
Yeah.
You deliberately develop yourself. And so when change happens, if you look at your life and you're seeing changes happening and you have no part in it, then maybe you don't want to be around those type of people. Or you look at your life and you're like, oh, all these things happen in my life. There was a lot of change in your life, right? But things that you control, you did. So when you're looking for that guy, look at his life and ask him, or just ask yourself when you're looking at him, what has he done in those throughout his life when change did occur, how much of a part did he play in that?
True.
And then does he show the propensity to want to continue to grow and to learn and to develop? Because that's one thing I'm going to definitely tell my daughter when she's looking for a guy is, depending on what age that is, if it's a younger guy, then it's like, we'll look at his high school years or middle school years. Was he a part of something? Was he a part of a team? Was he part of sports? Whatever, that shows that you can start and then develop over time. And then if he's an adult, did you show the propensity of learning, of growing? Because if he doesn't,
that's huge.
Your relationship working out, it always could, but you're just the chances I think are lower. But just look for that in a guy. It's like, is that guy someone that is willing to change on his own? Not that you need to change him, but he is wanting to continually to develop and to change and better himself. Hopefully those guys are out there. I'm finding them harder to find because they've been so distracted with just all the distractions out there with video games. And like my boys the other day, you know what fantasy football is?
No.
So sports are a big thing in America, right? We love our football, our basketball, or whatever. And so they've created a fantasy league. And so depending on how a player does, you get points. And my kid was like, hey, can I join a fantasy team? And I told him, once you figure out the real world, then you can go play in Fantasyland. He's like, okay.
That's true.
But that's what we've done. We've just, all these boys that have become men are now just addicted to things that have no substance.
Yeah.
Right? Sure, can you have some fun doing that? Maybe. But when you find yourself playing a video game for 12 hours, or you're so consumed with this stat on this particular player
Yeah.
who's a millionaire, like how is that really changing or impacting your life?
That's true.
You
Yeah.
know? There's a lot of boys in that way where they're just so, there's some vice that they're just has control of them.
Yeah.
And you hopefully find the guy that has got it together.
Hopefully. Yeah.
But I mean, once a guy gets past 25, if he's a good one, he should have matured. And so you're past that age where 20 to 24, they're still little boys.
True.
So hopefully once they get past 25, if they've unlocked or figured life out, hopefully by 25 their brains are developed. But
Yeah.
I'm excited for you and your future.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll meet again someday,
Sure.
and excited to see what happens with you.